This year, the United States celebrates its 250th birthday, and next year, the Vermont Republic turns 250. How is the state celebrating, and how can you get in on the festivities? We're finding out today on Across the Fence.
Hello, Vermont. The American Revolution was messier than most of us were taught in school, filled with dates, histories, and personalities that shaped our emerging nation, but that aren't glorified the way the Founding Fathers or the signing of the Declaration of Independence is. That's one of the reasons this 250th anniversary of the U.S. is such a great opportunity for lovers of history. Instead of celebrating just one day, you can fill a whole calendar with commemorations and dig deep into unheralded heroes. That's what Vermont 250 is all about. Joining me to talk about it is Christopher Kaufman Ilstrup, the Executive Director of Vermont Humanities, who you'll remember from last week when we sat down to talk about the queer history of Charity and Sylvia, an early American same-sex couple whose de facto marriage was recognized by their neighbors in Weybridge, Vermont. It is worth a rewatch if you missed it. Christopher, welcome back. It's nice to have you again here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, but for anyone who didn't see it, let's start with a refresher on Vermont Humanities and what your organization does. So tell us a little bit about it.
Sure, yeah. Vermont Humanities was created in 1974.
Mm-hmm.
It's the state affiliate of the National Endowment for the Humanities, as well as the Library of Congress, actually, through their Center for the Book program. So we've existed for 52 years, and our role is to bring the humanities and conversations about the humanities to Vermonters. We like to say these days that anytime two or more people gather in a room to talk about making their community a better place, that's the humanities. We do it through history, philosophy, poetry, literature, the classics, and lots of other contemporary conversations as well.
Yeah, and so partly what you're doing, and especially we're going to talk about this for Vermont 250, you're sort of serving as an aggregator for a lot of different events and activities that are going on around the state, but it builds on things that Vermont Humanities is always doing. So you've got the Vermont Reads and Speakers Bureau, so tell us a little bit about what those types of programs are.
Sure, yeah, we do a lot of different things around the state every year. When we talked about Charity and Sylvia last week, that's our Vermont Reads book for 2026. It's a book about two Vermont women who lived together as a married couple in the early years of the Republic. They're really part of that sort of immediate post-Revolutionary War generation. We also do a lot of work bringing speakers to libraries and historical societies around the state through our Speakers Bureau. We have a fall festival. We run humanities camps for middle school students every year. And we do a lot of training of teachers, especially teachers of the earliest, the littlest readers, we call them, the 0 to 5.
Yes, so many ways to fall in love with books and literature through
so many ways.
Humanities. Okay, so then there's Vermont 250. So tell us a little bit about how that came about. That's
Sure.
It's part of the state, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So we are part of the Vermont 250th Commission,
Yep.
which was created by Governor Scott in 2022. So it's been quite a while now to sort of get us ready for the actual 250th this year. It has diverse representation on it. There are historians, there are people who are interested in reenacting, there are arts and culture advocates like me and my colleague at the Vermont Arts Council. There's a representative from the Abenaki community that sits on the commission. And together we all are sort of coordinating and aggregating information about how Vermonters are thinking about, talking about, and commemorating the 250th anniversary of the United States.
Yeah, and so one of the things, and we'll go back and forth, there's a great website, and on that website for like the Vermont Humanities Vermont 250 website, it's filled with events and things that people can go and see. There's even some, because events started back in January, December, January? Yeah.
Events have been going on actually for,
right.
I don't know, a year and a half, maybe longer.
Yeah. Well, because this is actually the revolutionary history, is it doesn't start on July the 4th, right?
Right,
yeah.
Right, and you know, you go back to 1775 and
Yep.
the Boston Massacre,
Yep.
and the history of the revolution really started earlier.
Yeah.
The signing of the Declaration of Independence is what we're commemorating with the 250th.
I actually think it's a little funny that the signing of the Declaration of Independence didn't actually happen until August 2nd, 1776.
Yeah.
And on July 4th, it was actually just the agreement on the language of the Declaration. So that's one of those funny things by history. Start digging into the details, and then you learn that there are all these other dates and people and folks that we don't necessarily talk about. So let's actually go back to Charity and Sylvia for a moment, because again, unheralded heroes of sort of of moments in history. Tell us a little bit more about them and then Vermont Reads and how this is part of Vermont 250.
Sure, yeah. Charity and Sylvia, as we talked about, were a couple that they were both born in Massachusetts right in the Revolutionary War moment.
Charity 1777.
Charity 1777, and Sylvia just a few years later, right after the end of the war. And their families were really affected by the Revolutionary War. Charity had an older brother who died during the Revolutionary War. The economy was sort of in a shambles. They lived in big families. And like many immigrant and migrant families, they had to move for economic reasons. So Sylvia Drake and her family moved earlier first, and then Charity followed a few years after that when she met Sylvia in Weybridge in 1807. They were then never apart for 44 years.
Yeah. That's a beautiful story. You definitely want to go back and rewatch that episode if you didn't see it. When you were picking the 2026 book for Vermont Reads, how did you decide it should be this story?
Well, you know, we were looking at a lot of America 250 books, and then there's a lot to choose from, right? There's a tremendous number of really great books written about the American Revolutionary period. But in the end, it felt like picking this story, which is a Vermont story, was really important.
Especially because it also gives us that bridge to the fact that America, 250 this year, and Vermont, the founding of the Vermont Republic, next year, commitment to 1777 is, wait, is that my right? Yes, 1777, 250th of Vermont. So yes, so we're going over into a Vermont story too when we get there. Then there's the Speakers Bureau, right? So that's another ongoing program that's incorporated into Vermont 250. So how's that? What is that, and how is that working now?
So, you know, for anybody watching at home, if you want to have one of our Speakers Bureau talks, you just find a nonprofit. It can be your library, it can be your historical society, it can be your senior center, whatever you'd like. It can be your school. You go on our website and you look at the 250th talks. You figure out which one you want to bring. There's a lot of great choices.
Yes.
And you contact that speaker, arrange a date with them, and then we pay the speaker to go to your library. There's a form that you fill out, and it's pretty self-explanatory when you get on the website, but there's really great things happening right now, right?
Yeah.
So for example, right out of Addison County, where the Charity and Sylvia story is a guy named John Vincent, who is doing a talk now called "A Revolution Will Not Be Tweeted."
Oh, right. Okay. Yes, from Revolutionary Press.
Yeah,
yes,
from Revolutionary Press. So he is a letterpress printer, and he makes broadsides. And actually, their chapter headings in Charity and Sylvia are broadsides.
Wow. Okay.
He will bring his little letterpress printer to your library, to your historical society, and work with the people who come to make a broadside of the Revolutionary War style right then and there while he's talking to you about the history of the work. That's pretty great.
Yeah, yeah.
On a contemporary side, I'm really loving Rajni Eden's talk. He's a poet from here in Burlington. He's doing a talk called Reclaiming Our Shared Humanity in America's 250th Year, to really talk about how polarized we are in this moment and to try and get people to engage with each other across difference.
Yeah. That's the important conversation we need to be having
It's an
right
important conversation, and Rajni is the person to do it. So that's just two examples.
That's two examples. And then, so you can arrange for a speaker, but then there's also links, I think, to some presentations that folks have been to before. Like, how can people find out about events that they can go and attend themselves?
Sure. The calendar of events on our website and also on the Vermont 250 website will tell you about events all over the state. Some of them will be ours, our Speakers Bureau events. Some of them will be local events that we've supported through grant making.
Yeah.
Some of them will be museum events. Bennington Museum is doing a lot about the Battle of Bennington, and certainly the Black history of the Battle of Bennington has been a big topic of discussion there. Sheldon Museum is going to be doing a lot about Charity and Sylvia.
There's lots and lots and lots of these events too. So you're definitely going to check out the calendar because they're all over the state. You know, there's a whole, like a very thick calendar of things to go and see. Finally, you're also giving out grants for community programs. So how does that work?
Yeah, so we, you know, one of our primary purposes is to provide grant funding to local communities to do their own humanities projects. It's actually our biggest program. Vermont Reads comes next, but grant making is our biggest. And so the next deadline For a project grant, which is up to $5,000, is actually in September. But people can apply for mini grants of up to $1,000 at any time. And even today, you can just go on and you can apply for a grant. It has to be a humanities project, right? It has to engage with history, literature, and so on. And you have to have a nonprofit sponsor. We don't give grants to individuals. But you can see the kinds of things that we have funded in the past and the kinds of things that we're likely to want to be funding in the future.
Perfect.
There was still a little bit of money that's set aside for 250 programs, although July 4th is in just a week and a half.
It's coming up quick.
It's coming up quick. But you know, the Revolutionary War continued for several years.
Yeah.
And of course, we have the anniversary of the Vermont Republic coming right up.
So many good things. Okay, so is there anything in the works for 2027 that you're particularly excited about for, say, the Vermont part of this celebration?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what people are excited about, right? 1777 is the founding of Vermont. So it's our 250th anniversary as the place that we now call Vermont, right? Before that, it was contested land.
Right.
It was the Abenaki people's land, primarily.
Yes.
But contested by New Hampshire and New York.
Right.
1777 is when we declared Vermont as
Then it
its
took
own
until
republic.
1791 before we finally get our statehood.
Right.
So then there's about 14 years there
14
of
years
actually
of Vermont history as an independent nation.
Yeah, so actually technically we're going to be doing this for the next 15 years. I'll just keep bringing you back on the show.
Absolutely.
We can continue to talk
A
about
lot
it.
of interesting stories from the Vermont Republic period.
Oh yeah. Well, what will you be doing on July 4th?
Well, you know, I imagine that I am going to somehow be participating in a national program called America's Potluck.
Oh, I love that.
Right? Back to the idea of bringing people together across difference. One of the things that is happening nationally that I really love is this idea of encouraging everybody to have a potluck.
I love that.
Just to bring people together to enjoy a meal.
Okay. I will be making pie. This is what my big July 4th plan.
And
this
bring
is,
it to the
and I'm
potluck.
going to bring it to a potluck. I have a lot of people I'm excited to get together with, and that's my part, is to bring a pie.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pies for Peace. Thank you so much for joining me. You can learn more about Vermont Humanities on their website. The link is right there on your screen, and we've also put up the link for their Vermont 250 page, where you can find out more about those upcoming events and speakers, and find links to recordings from 250 events held earlier this year. There are so many amazing ways to be engaged in history over the coming months. So, Charles Kaufman Ilstrup, I have enjoyed both of your visits to Across the Fence. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank
Can't
you
wait
so
to
much
have
for
you
having
back.
me.
And as always, thank you, Vermont, for learning and exploring with me today. And thanks to the team that makes Across the Fence possible. I'm Amy Finley. This is Across the Fence. Come back and let's learn and explore again tomorrow.